The film begins in the year 2063, after humanity has caused the destruction of Earth. The primary causes of this catastrophe were pollution and wars. Because of this, most of the Earth is submerged, and only 2 states remain. Each state wants to take control of the other to rule the world. We also learn that the Earth's resources have become extremely scarce, barely enough for one of the states. These 2 states are on opposite borders of the map. In the middle, there's a camp called Sentinel, where 4 soldiers are stationed. The camp belongs to one of the states. The soldiers' names are Cassidy, Sullivan, and Barnes, and their commander is Hendricks. They have been at the camp for 2 years to fight their enemy, and their service ended months ago, but no help has arrived yet to take them home. Of course, they are all terrified because their food and water are running out, and there are no signs that anyone is coming. One night, a strong storm hits, and they see it as an opportunity to catch some fish. Hendricks asks Barnes to quickly secure the area and make sure all the pipes are shut. Barnes goes to secure the pipes but finds that they have exploded, and water is flooding the area. He tries to tie them, but it fails, and his hand gets stuck between 2 pipes. He manages to free his hand with great difficulty. Meanwhile, Sullivan successfully catches some fish, but suddenly the waves get high and wash away all the fish he caught. Sullivan feels defeated and quickly returns to the camp before the water drowns him. The next day, the team gathers to discuss how they will eat and drink in the coming period, as it's clear they will be stuck there for a while. They all agree to reduce their food intake and share it. However, Barnes completely objects to this idea, arguing that they will starve to death. He starts blaming Sullivan for not being able to catch fish yesterday, even though it was their only chance. They get into a heated argument, but Hendricks steps in, yelling at them to stop acting like teenagers and grow up, because it's no time to be fighting. Barnes asks why they haven't sent a message to the rescue team on the telegraph to come and save them. Hendricks tells him that the telegraph is meant for them to record their observations and send them to their base, as well as for emergency alerts. They can't use it as a distress signal because there's no reason to since things are stable. Afterward, Sullivan goes and stands alone outside the camp. He uses binoculars to look at the sea and is shocked to see a large ship approaching from a distance. He quickly contacts Cassidy and tells her this information. Cassidy checks the coordinates she has and finds that he is right because the ship is showing up on the radar. Sullivan gets excited and his hope returns because he thinks this is a rescue ship. However, Hendricks tells him not to get too happy because they're likely pirates. He asks him to take a weapon and use their boat to go to the ship to make sure it's safe. Sullivan takes the boat and heads toward the ship. As soon as he gets in front of it, he calls out to the crew, but no one answers. He gets his weapon ready and enters the ship, starting to explore it. Here's the shock. The ship is completely abandoned, and it's clear that no human has been on this ship for a long time. Sullivan goes down to the lower part of the ship and finds military uniforms, and he immediately realizes that the people on this ship were a rescue team that was coming for them, but they died before they could arrive. During this time, Hendricks is very tense because Sullivan hasn't contacted him since he entered the ship. He starts to worry about him and thinks that the pirates have captured him. He wants to intervene and open fire, so he asks Cassidy to tell him how to activate the explosives. Cassidy gets nervous because she doesn't like his violent method, but she has to obey him because he's the commander. Hendricks starts activating the bombs, but before he fires at the ship, he contacts Sullivan one last time. Sullivan responds, reassuring him that he's okay, and telling him that there's no one on the ship. Hendricks quickly stops the explosives. When Sullivan returns to the camp, he tells his colleagues what he saw on the ship. He tells them that the ship was coming to rescue them, but something happened and prevented them. He tells them that the ship is somewhat operational and that he brought it to the camp so they can use it, but it needs some repairs. Sullivan suggests to Hendricks that they contact the base to inform them of the recent developments, but Hendricks completely rejects the idea, claiming that they haven't discovered anything new that could be useful. Of course, they are all surprised by his stance and are fed up with him and his control over them, but they are forced to obey him in everything, even if it's wrong and will harm them. Afterward, Hendricks goes and takes the ship's coordinates and records them on a paper he has. At night, Sullivan is sitting with Cassidy, and they discuss the catastrophe that happened to the world. They remember how good life was before people became greedy and caused the destruction of Earth. Sullivan tells Cassidy that he feels that something is not right because the sudden disappearance of the ship's crew is illogical. That's why he sent a distress signal to the base and is waiting for them to respond. The next day, we see them in the telegraph room, waiting for the base to respond. That's when Hendricks arrives and finds out what they did behind his back, and he gets very upset. But they don't pay attention to him and continue waiting for the message. A few moments later, a message arrives from the base. Sullivan quickly runs to read the message, but he is shocked to find that it is the same message he sent. This is proof that the message never reached the base, and no one will rescue them. One day, Sullivan notices that Barnes is going down to the ship a lot, and he always has his toolbox with him. So, he sits with him and asks him what's going on exactly, because he suspects that he's planning something behind their backs. Barnes tells him that he misses his family and dreams every day of being with them. He was able to study the components of a ship and knows how to fix it, so they can travel to the state on it before the next storm comes. But of course, he didn't say this in front of Hendricks because he knows that he would be the first one to object and prevent him from even trying. When Sullivan hears this, he gets excited and feels that there is still hope. He goes and wakes Cassidy up and tells her about the plan to escape. He asks her to come with them and live in one of the two states and start a new life together. At first, Cassidy is not convinced by the idea because she's afraid of Hendricks, but when she sees the excitement in Sullivan's eyes, she has to agree. The next day, we see Barnes and Sullivan fixing the ship together, and they are very happy. But as soon as they finish, they find Hendricks in front of them. Hendricks calmly orders them to dismantle certain parts of the ship's engine and move them to the base. Of course, the two of them refuse because, in doing so, he is destroying everything they built. Hendricks gets angry at them and threatens to kill them with his weapon if they don't follow his orders. He reminds them that he is their commander and that they are obligated to follow his orders, even if their mission with him is over. At that moment, Cassidy comes in and calms Hendricks down. She tells him that she understands how he feels and knows that he is upset and sad about his team that died in the last mission. But she tells him that there is hope for them to live, and she asks him to give his men a chance to prove to him that they are really capable. After a while, Hendricks returns to his men and tells them that he thought about their offer and agrees to it, but he has a few conditions. The conditions are that Cassidy will stay with him at the camp until they take the ship and go ask for help from the base. Of course, Sullivan is the first one to object to this because he doesn't want to leave Cassidy alone with him. But Hendricks tells him that this was Cassidy's suggestion from the start, and he has no other choice but to agree or cancel the mission altogether. Sullivan goes to talk to Cassidy privately and asks her to change her mind and escape with him because he doesn't want to leave her alone. He reminds her of everything they have been through and that they can't leave each other. But Cassidy coldly tells him that she doesn't love him and that he is imagining things and that everything that happened between them was just a fling. Of course, Sullivan is shocked by her words, so he leaves her and goes outside. At night, we see Sullivan getting ready for the mission. That's when Hendricks comes in and gives him a paper with certain coordinates on it and asks him to deliver the paper to the base when he arrives. He tells him that their enemy is a soldier just like them, but their enemy is willing to do anything, even if it's wrong, to protect his people. Of course, Sullivan is surprised by his words and doesn't understand anything. Sullivan suggests to him for the second time that they all escape together, but he refuses again. Afterward, Hendricks goes and looks at something specific in the ship's coordinates and is shocked. He remains silent, and it's clear that he has discovered who their real enemy is. The next day, they all wake up to a loud alarm and discover that a new ship is approaching them. They all quickly get ready to fight. Cassidy also tries to contact the new ship, but no one responds. Hendricks orders his men to fire bombs at the ship. They start doing so, but they can't hit the ship. They are surprised to find that it is the same ship they found, so they refuse to fire at it because it is their last hope to escape the island. But suddenly, Hendricks comes to them with his weapon raised and orders them to follow his orders and destroy the ship. This time, Barnes refuses to follow his orders. Hendricks gets angry and shoots him in the ear, threatening that the next shot will be in his chest if he doesn't follow orders. Here, Sullivan becomes very scared for his friend, so he is forced to follow the orders and destroy the ship. Barnes looks at the ship from a distance as it is being destroyed and is very defeated because it was his last hope to return to his family. At that moment, Cassidy comes from behind Hendrix and hits him on the head. Then, they take him and lock him in a room alone. Cassidy takes the keys to the explosives from him. Barnes is very angry and goes after them to kill Hendrix, but they stop him with great difficulty and get into a fight with him. So, Barnes goes and sits alone, sad, and starts looking at his young son's toys, whom he hasn't seen. At the same time, Sullivan and Cassidy agree to send a distress signal to all the surrounding parties until the signal reaches one of them and they respond. Cassidy agrees to his suggestion. In the middle of the conversation, she apologizes to him for the harsh things she said to him and tells him that she didn't mean any of it, but she was forced to say it so he would leave her because she was afraid for him. Afterward, Sullivan goes to check on Hendrix and asks him why he is acting this way with them and why he doesn't want them to return home. Hendrix tells him that a rescue ship was supposed to arrive 3 months ago, but what happened is that someone among them killed everyone on the ship. The traitor among them wants to take control of the explosives. They have to send them to a state. He tells him that he was doing all this to protect them from the traitor in their midst. Of course, Sullivan is shocked by what he hears and starts to suspect everyone around him. At night, Cassidy sits with Sullivan and shows him a picture of her and her family. She tells him that her entire family was killed in the war and she is the only one left. The next day, Barnes is drunk, so he goes and gets into a fight with Cassidy and steals the keys to the explosives from her. Cassidy quickly goes and tells Sullivan what happened and tells him that his friend seems to have gone crazy and stole the keys to the explosives to blow up the camp with everyone in it. Sullivan quickly goes to him to calm him down, but he finds him completely broken and hopeless in his life. Sullivan reminds him of his family that is waiting for him to calm him down. In the end, Barnes regains his senses and refuses to blow up the camp. He confesses to him that he went into Hendrix's room a little while ago to kill him, but he was surprised to find that he had thrown himself into the sea. Sullivan quickly runs to the room where he was locked up and doesn't find him, and he is very sad that he died in that way. The next day, Barnes decides to take Cassidy on the rescue boat and take an exploratory tour in the ocean, hoping to find anything that can save them. Before Barnes leaves, he goes to say goodbye to Sullivan and hugs him and tells him that he is back again. While Sullivan is sitting alone, he decides to fish. When he pulls the net, he is surprised to find Hendrix's body. There are signs of a blow to his head. Here, he immediately understands that he was killed and that he didn't throw himself into the sea, and that the person who killed him is among them. He starts to suspect Cassidy, so he goes and searches her file and discovers that she is the traitor. She came from the enemy state to take control of the explosives at the camp and take them with her to her state. She is also the one who killed the rescue team before they arrived. Of course, Sullivan is shocked. A little while later, Cassidy returns to the camp, crying and broken. She tells Sullivan that Barnes died and she couldn't save him. But Sullivan knows and is sure that she is the one who killed him and that she intends to get rid of them one by one to take control of the explosives. But he remains silent and doesn't show anything and treats her normally. The next day, Cassidy wakes up and doesn't find Sullivan next to her. That's when he contacts her with the radio and tells her that he has exposed her and knows that she is a spy and that she came to take the explosives to her state. He surprises her by telling her that he has activated the explosives and will blow up the camp with all of them in it to punish her. Cassidy quickly runs to the control room to stop the explosion and cries. She tells him that she was forced to do this to help her people because they are suffering from poverty and hunger. She tells him that she really loved him and didn't want to hurt him. But Sullivan doesn't pay attention and gets ready to blow up the place. But at that moment, everything stops. He discovers here that Barnes, before he died, programmed the explosives so that they wouldn't explode because he knew that his colleagues might hurt themselves in a moment of weakness. After Sullivan calms down, he sits and talks with Cassidy and listens to her because they are now both trapped together on the same island and they have no solution but to cooperate to get out or to continue their lives together on the island.